Welcome back to the Better Learning Podcast. My name is Matt Rogers, and in this special episode, we're taking you on the road with us to hear directly from members of the A4LE Association for Learning Environments community. Over the past several months, we had the opportunity to attend several A4LE regional conferences across the country, connecting with architects, educators, planners, designers, and industry partners who are all passionate about creating better learning environments. At each conference, we asked attendees a few questions. What does it mean to be radically student-centered? What are the biggest opportunities and challenges facing educational facility planning and design today? What conversations should more people in our industry be having? And of course, we threw in a few fun local questions along the way. This episode features conversations and insights from A4LE Southern Regional Conference in Austin, Texas. Without further ado, let's dive in.
First question for you. How do you approach a school design process with maximum impact in mind, not just replacing an old building? So what do you consider when you're about to build a new campus that hopefully yields better results academically?
At Kirksey, we have a really unique process, I believe, of involving the community and the end users and the people with a vested interest in that building. We do a lot of visioning sessions where we incorporate students and parents and teachers and community members that we want them to feel like they have a voice, and we want them to be heard, and we want to hear their vision. Because if you build a building that no one, has any buy-in, they're not going to take care of it. They're not going to, they're not going to love it. So we do a number of sessions with all of those people, sometimes all together, sometimes separate, and make sure that it's recorded and that we share the information that we gathered from those sessions so that there's a record of it and say, this is what we're going to pay attention to as we move into the design phase. And we're going to continually look back at it and say, what did everyone tell us they wanted this building to be, so that we can then make sure it's reflected all the way through the project? Because I think that's the only way you're going to be able to make that impact.
I think that the first step is understanding the client in the district, because maximizing can mean different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
And so to one district, maximizing might be square footage. To another client, it might be quality of materials and circulation and flow, or maybe they really want outdoor learning as a key portion of it. So the real thing to start off with is, what does the client want? How do they want to teach? And what are their priorities? From there, you can then maximize their priorities, because we are in a service culture, in an environment, and we do provide a product, right? Mm-hmm. As a designer, you have these ideas and these dreams and you want to make amazing spaces, but at the end of the day, we provide a service, and my goal is to make sure that our clients are absolutely thrilled with their end product.
I know that, what we do as a company aligns. We're completely 100% education focused, but, that comes in a lot of different forms. And where we really align, I think, with K12 and with all that you guys are kind of talking about, radically student-centered design.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's a trademark, radically student-centered K12. Thank you.
But we approach with sort of the students at the forefront, right, as well. That design should be student-centered. And kind of what that means to us is that, it's focused on agency, right, and creating that agency. And that starts in the design process with maybe gathering a lot of input from students, teachers, and it's still, being student-centered. Having the teachers in mind is critical too, and the staff that's on the campus and the community, because they can all be involved to help that, student thrive, right? So gathering all that input, doing that visioning, and then creating spaces and designing spaces with them and with their voices in order to, create that passion for curiosity and imagination and creativity and a love of learning, because that will serve the students well and translate right throughout their whole lives. Right. So, and then really, that agency doesn't stop in the design, but in later on the spaces that we've created and giving them the freedom to choose what best suits their learning. So building in that sort of diversity and learning opportunities directly into the architecture and landscape. So that's kind of always what we focus on, and creating a story out of that.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the word process there. Is you have to give yourself enough time to make sure you're doing it right. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard from districts or community members that they want to do it right the first time. And I couldn't agree more. But you have to give yourself the time to do that and not try and squeeze it into a tiny bit of time frame where you don't have the opportunity to lay the groundwork and have the communication and the engagement with your community. For me, that's where everything starts, and it continues throughout the process of the design.
Right.
You've got to start listening to the community right away, understanding what they're looking for and what they value.
The first thing I do is ask, can we speak to the students? That's an important factor for how we design. They're the end user, them and the teachers together. Many times, believe it or not, a lot of districts will say, you're just going to speak to the principal or the superintendent, the administration, and not really allow you the opportunity to speak to the teachers that's using the room, the students that's using the room and the space, and what they feel is important, not important. I attended a presentation the other day where I think someone from a district said, we have students that will not go to the restroom all day long because they're afraid to go into the bathrooms, afraid what might happen. So I think knowing those things ahead of time gives you the opportunity to create spaces that is important to them and makes them feel safe and secure.
What is one big idea or trend in school design that you guys are seeing right now that's really overused or misunderstood?
Well, we heard about it in one of our superintendent's panel this morning. I mean, one of the superintendents picked on learning stairs, right? I mean, so they are
Easy, you're the third person today that's mentioned that.
Well, I mean, but what we haven't talked about really is why they're so difficult. Why do we need rules on them? And we see it in collaborative spaces and all other new innovative areas in our buildings. In the back of my head, I've seen how our campuses run and they operate. And there was a period in my career where I had to substitute teach in order to remember why I have a job. And they've since, that requirement has gone away out of necessity more than anything else.
Right.
But if you've been in a campus and try to figure out when is a student going to go, or a group of students going to go hang out on that learning stair, or even in the collaboration zone and actually collaborate, generally speaking, unsupervised, when does that happen during the school day, right? So we're hyper concerned with the number of minutes of education. So we schedule our bell schedules are not at the 5s and 10s, they're at 7,
right.
8, 14. I mean, because they are worried about minute-to-minute operation of the day.
Correct.
So when do they have the time to get out and use those spaces effectively?
What's the boldest idea you've ever pushed for in a school, and how did you convince the community to take that risk? We are doing a school of aviation in Norman. It's basically a school that multiple high schools, and actually high schools throughout the state of Oklahoma. It's really a high school for Norman, but it's a high school for the state where you can do distance learning, things like that. But one of the things they wanted to do, man, would it be great if we could fly drones? And well, we're near an airport. And so drone flying is, a little bit prohibited on the outside. And I said, well, what about if we fly them inside? And they're like, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, but why? And so we had more of a deeper conversation. Students are going to learn. I mean, they have drone races nationally. And so what are the things that we could do to this gym or multi-purpose space to make it safe for drone flying, teach the students how to do it in a safe way? So that's probably recently one of the biggest things I've done. Like, hey, we can fly drones safely in here and without hurting anyone, and making students understand that, they can do that. So
what's something in maybe school design that more people should be talking about?
We led a breakout on bond planning and community engagement. We had a good crowd of people there. That was really good. I've gone to 2 other ones. Both of them kind of had this same theme, and it was, how can you reposition schools or transform physical spaces? Because some school districts are dealing with enrollment declines and aging buildings, and is it better to combine buildings, or what to do? And one district is doing a pre-K 8th grade model, which I thought was so smart and just looked very cool and different. Another one was working on, and this maybe it came from the panel as a topic to explore, but a elementary senior center kind of merge. I don't think that's in development yet, but it was one like, how can we be innovative in that kind of space? So I think that, unfortunately, school districts are dealing with some really tough things right now. And so I think what, really identifies the strength of educators is their ability to work through those challenges. So I think just really thinking, okay, what is this next iteration going to look like? And so, there was a lot of talk of kind of the same things that we hear a lot about natural lighting and all that impacts student performance and collaborative spaces and making sure that whatever the learning environment looks like, what career world's going to be, how does AI fit into all of that? Yes. So there was a lot of those kinds of things to be determined, but I do think that there's an opportunity now to really look at these spaces in a different way.
Definitely trauma-informed design. We did a school for homeless children back in 2019 that opened up. It was a McConnell finalist in 2020. The kids at this school in particular are homeless. They could be living in cars. They could be living in homeless shelters. They could be couch homeless, living on an aunt or an uncle's couch for short times. But they bring trauma. And so I never really thought about that before, that not only at a school for homeless children, but a school for any high school, any elementary, any middle school, you never know what students are going through. Parents could lose jobs. They may not have the ability to buy shoes, to buy a backpack at the first day of school. So implementing, when I talked about implementing drones into a school, I think the idea of implementing things that kids need on a daily basis, so a donation closet is something that's we always try to implement. It's not always thought about, well, we don't have the space for that. And it's not only a donation closet for backpack, shoes, clothing that the student may need, school supplies. It could be food, a food pantry, implementing a shower, and I'm not talking about in a locker room, right, but a safe and secure space that if a student is transitional in housing, that they can go to, take a shower. We've all been to high school. High schoolers can be mean to one another. Middle schoolers can be mean to one another. If a student sticks out in any way and it's not their fault, it's like, we can fix this. And if it's simply a shower, pair of shoes, a new set of clothes, a new backpack, things that can help them fit in, we need to be thinking about those things. And there's simple things that any school could be they could be implemented into any school. But I think really just making sure that the audience looks at a school in a different way, that not all of these students are created equal. A lot of schools are labeled, oh, this is a rich high school, or this is a poor high school, or whatever. We've got these issues in every school from elementary to high school in the nation. And I think just incorporating those, thinking about trauma, thinking about how we deal with acoustics, lighting, and those elements in every school is important to each and every student.
What advice would you give school leaders when it comes to furniture and design and implementing that change into their school?
I think it is setting the culture of risk-taking, of trying something new, of figuring out what is the manageable, small first and next steps to try, and being super specific about the measure of success for that step and how we're going to move. So, something as basic as letting students come in and choose where they're going to sit and being able to move around the classroom. And when it becomes independent work, they can go and they can talk to a peer. They can go sit by themselves. They can sit underneath a table. They can sit facing the wall, that kind of try, experiment, and then we're going to come back and we're going to reflect on what's working and what's not and why. And so I think the culture of risk-taking and trying new things, because it's never just the teacher and it's certainly not just the kid that's the problem. I think it does need to be a collective impact approach to change where the student, we're developing procedures collaboratively with the kids in regard to those small steps, how they're going to choose their seats, for example. and the teacher knows what they're going to do because they've been in community with their grade level team or their subject level team or their vertical team and thinking about what those procedures might be in terms of developing them collaboratively and how they'll know they'll be successful. And the principal is following, or the instructional coach, there's a follow-through conversation. There's a circle back reflection on what's working and what's not that I think is very much missing from instruction or missing from the way we teach. And so that advice is setting an expectation collaboratively with the faculty, helping the faculty understand how they're going to set those procedures up collaboratively with the students, and then coming back and, hey, maybe even getting the students to come into the conversation and reflect on what's working and what's not, and moving forward as a team.
It's an idea or concept you guys have had, or maybe within the industry, that works, it has worked, and you've presented it to stakeholders at a school, and they're like, nope, we don't want that. We want it like this. Can you think of a situation or a time where that's something you guys were like, y'all need this, and they're like, no, we don't want it?
The one I'm thinking of it's not necessarily architecture related, but it was a project that had a very passionate community, and we said, you need to show them. You need to show them. And the school said, no, we're good. It got all the way to the board, and then the community came and said, we've never seen this, and we're upset, and no one talked to us, and so
Politics.
I just can't stress it enough how if you have a passionate community,
you better listen to them.
Let them in, or else it will catch you on the tail end.
So what trends or current innovations or things that are going on right now in design that excite you the most, and why? In other words, what's happening that you're just like really, really gung-ho about when it comes to architectural design for new schools?
We're actually doing a transformation of an existing campus right now, and but replacing or building 3 new buildings and then renovating some of the others, and really just transforming the whole campus. And it's all based around, well, the idea is, what if you could go to school in a forest and go on a hike through your school, and all the things that you might discover and explore and learn about your peers, about yourself, about your whole sort of creating this community. Focusing on nature-based play, that's a big thing. And then sort of just the freedom to have different types of spaces and intentionally creating those different spaces. So you might have a quiet little nook, or you might have, a larger sort of clearing or gathering area, or somewhere where there's water play, or creating different things for music or the senses or sounds. The excitement is where they mesh together and sort of just become one, right? So you've got this seamless movement throughout the campus where you're always learning from your buildings, from your, from the nature, from each other. So
if you're going to design a school now for graduates in 20 years from now, what would you do different now?
I think a lot about how we've come so far, but when you look at a traditional classroom, we haven't really, right? It's still 4 walls. It has a marker board at the front. It has a teacher's desk. It has tech boards, and that never seems to change. In the 20 years I've been doing this, like, that's every classroom, and we have made great strides with flexible spaces and collaboration areas. And what do our libraries look like? Are they media centers? Are they libraries? And that's an awesome, fascinating conversation about what libraries will become. Classroom stays.
That's true.
It's the same. And I just feel like we're missing
something.
An opportunity. I might say that it could become more immersed in technology as we go 20 years into the future. And that it's not just 4 walls and a marker board at the front, but it's something more immersive.
So in your experience, what would you say separates a school that simply functions from one that truly transformed the community in positive ways?
I think your transformational schools are ones that fully embrace their role as a school, that they understand that obviously academics are important. They're paramount. That's why we're at a school. But the mental capacity, the social, emotional learning, the physical space, the physical activities. I mean, all of those things I think are really important too. I mean, you really, in my opinion, have to focus on the whole child and the whole learning experience, and those school districts and schools specifically that are transforming learning have that visionary leader, a principal that's dynamic, forward-thinking, risk-taker, not afraid to jump out there, but also has created structures that support that.
I think it's strong leadership. It's probably the go-to answer for most people, but it is the truth. The leader sets the culture. The leader helps hold people accountable for the cultural shift and makes the hard choices and has the hard conversations that make sure that every kid is greeted and treated and invited into learning experiences that have high expectations for what that kid can achieve. And I think the requirement that I believe should be held for every teacher to have high expectations for every kid can sometimes fall through the cracks with the amount of pressures that teachers are under, with the amount of, different initiatives they're juggling, the different, pressures from all sides in terms of standardized testing in some place like Texas. And it's the leader who sets the tone not only of those high expectations, but the joy and the passion for learning that we want to instill in everyone.
Yeah, that goes back to the culture and climate you just described.
Yeah.
So the leader kind of dictates everything.
And brings in the community, helps to set the pace and the climate for collaboration so that the newer teachers are welcomed, the seasoned teachers, strengths are honored. There's an expectation to work in collaboration, to learn from each other, to model for each other.
Right.
What does a strong partnership between design firms and educational leaders look like? And why does it matter?
It's important. I look at things in many ways like a three-legged stool, and I'm going to add a contractor to this. A three-legged stool to me is the educational leadership, the architect, and the contractor. All three working together to think about design and building a school. If one of the legs falls, the stool falls over. And so all three are very important. But as far as educators and architects, we have the same goal in mind. We want to make sure that students are safe, students can learn, teachers can teach to the best of their abilities in a space that is welcoming, feels good, flexible furniture, everything that we talk about in school design. We all have the same goal, and we got to get on the same page together. We're not in it, at least at MA+, we're not in it for awards. We are there to make sure that the end design meets the needs of the end user. And I think that's important.
Walk us through, what were your thoughts on that session about the importance of not trading off safety in lieu of not having the welcoming piece as well?
School design, you got to think of it in so many different ways where we want safety and security. And if you ask sometimes a police officer, they're going to want it to look, I don't want to say more like a prison, but they're not going to be thinking about welcoming. They're not going to be thinking about how a community member views the school from the outside. They're wanting to make sure that the students are safe. So from an architect standpoint, I want to walk in and I want to immediately feel welcome. I want to see where I'm at with signage. I want to see some history of the school, and all that can be done in what we're going to call a secure entry vestibule. And I think in our Bucky session, they mentioned a community welcoming vestibule or something like that. Changing the name just alone makes you feel welcome.
It's a reframe. Yeah.
It's a reframe of I'm going to the school, and I know I'm probably in a safe and secure vestibule to make sure that I'm cool being here and I'm supposed to be here. But at the same time, I can look around and go, okay, I could see the school colors. I could feel welcome. I see graphics. I see history, and all that's important.
What process do you guys use to actually include, I guess, the learning community in your design process and implementation of what you're trying to do for a district?
Yeah, it's something groundbreaking. It's really communicating with the stakeholders and seeing how they want us to involve either the staff or the community. And a lot of times we do some planning exercises. They're very simple. Some can be planning about programming and finding out what's valuable to the teachers, what works in their current facilities, what doesn't work in their current facilities. We have these exercises where we bring in community members, and we have like these pinups and charrettes where we discuss just different topics. Because as a parent, you have a certain perspective that as an educator, you may not have, or vice versa, right? Everyone has their own priorities. And so it's basically these series of exercises. They can be pinups, they can be sketches, they can be looking at pictures or videos or going on an industry tour. That's a great way, right? Because then you see how other school districts or how other people are implementing spaces, and people go, oh, that's a great idea. Or, oh, you know what? That's really cool looking, but, at school district X, I don't really see how we would use that space. So I don't want to make that a priority. So those are just some of the tools, getting in a room together, spending hours together talking about it, writing everything down, try to organize it, and then try to prioritize it.
How much time do you need to know whether or not a school is great?
Sometimes you can tell just the moment you walk through the doors. You know you're in a really good school, a great school, almost immediately. You can feel it, the vibe. How are you welcomed or not welcomed by the front staff? What is the walk-up curb appeal? Yes. Is it warm and inviting? Is it, you want it to be safe, and you want it to be one where people feel confident in leaving their children. Yep. But you also want it to be welcoming. You want it to be warm and inviting. You want it to be one that's full of love and laughter and learning and fun. And so I think you can pretty much know that almost right away. And I've worked in old schools. I've worked in newer schools. One of the best schools I ever worked in, it was probably one of the oldest schools in the district, but it didn't matter what the structure looked like. It was really what was on the inside. And we had an amazing principal who hired great people who loved kids and loved being around kids. And so you knew right when you walked through those doors, hey, this is a great place. This is a school where I want to drop off my child. This is a school as a child where I want to learn. This is a school as an educator or staff member where I want to work and teach.
What is one big idea or trend in school design that you guys are seeing right now that's really overused or misunderstood?
What people call the learning stairs, right? These open staircases.
Right.
And let's just call it what it is. People want, they call it a learning stair because they don't want to implement anything into a facility that does not drive results for their student and for their staff. And I understand that. But what are those metrics? Social spaces are great. We need social spaces. Kids need social spaces. It's how they grow. That's how they learn how to communicate. It's how they learn how to control emotion, how to be themselves, right? And these learning stairs, we call it that because it has a nice little term to it, learning stairs. But really, they're a social space. So let's call it what it is. It's a social space, and we want to provide it because it creates an open environment. It creates connection from multiple stories, and they're great. But they get used a lot. They're expensive, and I do promote them. I do think they are worthwhile.
Well, we heard about it in one of our superintendent's panel this morning. One of the superintendents picked on learning stairs. Right. I mean, so they are
Easy. You're the third person today that's mentioned that.
Well, I mean, but what we haven't talked about really is why they're so difficult. Why do we need rules on them? And we see it in collaborative spaces and all other new innovative areas in our buildings. In the back of my head, I've seen how our campuses run and they operate. And there was a period in my career where I had to substitute teach in order to remember why I have a job. And they've since, that requirement has gone away out of necessity more than anything else. Right. But if you've been in a campus and try to figure out when is a student going to go, or a group of students going to go hang out on that learning stair, or even in the collaboration zone and actually collaborate, generally speaking, unsupervised, when does that happen during the school day, right? So we're hyper concerned with the number of minutes of education. So we schedule our bell schedules are not at the 5s and 10s. They're at 7, 8, 14. I mean, because they are worried about minute-to-minute operation of the day. Correct. So when do they have the time to get out and use those spaces effectively?
Spaces without natural light. I think everyone now recognizes the benefits of natural light in education, but it's inevitable that we end up with those spaces anyways. And so whenever I walk into those spaces, it does drive me crazy a little bit because it's like, okay, we can do this. Everyone's trying for it. But when we walk away without some natural light in key spaces, it does hurt my heart a little bit.
What does a strong partnership between firms, design firms, A&D firms, and educational leaders, what does it look like? And why does that matter so much, to have a good, firm relationship between the people that are designing and building these buildings and the leaders that are making that purchase?
Well, I know our leadership, we deal directly with our design team. So our planning team, the folks that I have in my department that help plan and then execute the construction, we're not educators for our training, right? So I'm a contractor. I grew up in construction. I know how we have a planner on our team who grew up in architecture, but in user research and design. And then I've got a team of folks that manage our work that are essentially contractor based. So when you get it from design to construction, our team is effective. But to get those designs in place, none of us have taught in the classroom. So we need to lean on the folks that have taught in the classroom. And that starts with the leadership. And then we work our way down into the teachers that can think beyond their own classroom into what would be a better global fit for some of the ideas or some of the methods they want to employ.
I got you.
I mean, so it's a constant conversation. We meet with my planning team meets with our assistant superintendents of curriculum every week. I meet with the superintendent of schools every week. We're constantly in front of our board members talking to them, because you've got to get a pulse on what the community says too, right? So it's not just about what we think is best or what the teachers think is best or even what the students want in their classrooms, but what does the community who is supporting and paying for it ultimately want and desire? So it's part of as we're coming through and around through our plans and with the new superintendent and a relatively new board in place, one of the tasks that is ahead of us that is important, we haven't yet kicked it off, is a long range, like you call it a design guideline. What does the community really expect? Because we've been building our buildings the way we've been building them for about 25 years. I mean, so it's been a good run. They've been solid and successful, but there's every once in a while you hear people talk about too pretty or too expensive, and I spend a lot of my time educating the public on it. It's not, it looks expensive, but we're trying to be durable, affordable, and build a building that'll last 50 years.
Of course.
So we want to meet with the whole leadership team and put some bumpers on that conversation, because we want to build a box to teach kids, but we don't want it to be a box. Or it may not need to be the square shape of the box. It might be something else.
Right.
But they don't often get to sit and think about that. So it's our job to challenge them to think about it so that we put those plans in place, all with the end, the educational outcome and the stewardship of the taxpayer dollars, right? All at once.
When you walk into a school building, whether it's a brand new building or an older building, how can you tell if the school is thriving or if it's just stagnant or even failing? What do you see as soon as you walk in?
What I look for is every kid talking and every kid participating all the time throughout the day. And I mean that as so deeply, because I think what happens sometimes is we have kids raising their hands to answer a question. We have the same 5 kids who are learning and teaching other kids and are pulled into positions of, maybe teaching and their peers in the classroom. But it needs to be a climate and culture where it's loud and it's messy, and every kid is standing up.
Kids are loud and messy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes adults. Yeah.
They can move around.
Right.
Kids are sitting in different ways on chairs. Kids are, on the floor. Kids are working in partners, and then suddenly they're working in a small group, and then they're off, figuring something out by themselves, and they're coming back to a small group. There's a lot of movement in the classroom. It's a lot of student-generated what's going to happen next that follows the plan, the lesson plan in a way, but the kids are dictating how this lesson's going to unfold. And that because kids are asking questions, and kids are taking risks, and kids are sharing ideas that they're not sure if they're going to be right or wrong, but they have the support of their peers. And you can feel that kind of lean into learning and trying something new and failing forward, as we say, with kids, just walking classroom to classroom. It's totally different when you walk into a school and all the kids are walking in that straight line with their hands behind their back and the bubble in the mouth. and you get to the classrooms and they're silent and the kids are all crisscross applesauce on the carpet and watching the teacher, and the teacher's going through the lesson point by point. That is absolutely not what I want to see. That is how we taught, back in the day, 5-10 years ago, maybe it was even okay. But now it is, kids can Google that. They don't need the sage on the stage at all. I mean, they haven't for a long time, but really now they don't.
What is something that students experience every day in a school building that most adults have no idea what's happening?
I think they're starting to understand. This conversation's growing, but sensory issues and just the idea, for so long, students that were quote unquote struggling were perceived as special education needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Needing IEPs.
They immediately got a label.
Exactly.
They got a meeting. They got all this extra plans in place, whether it be an IEP or a 504 plan or whatever it may be, because people could figure out what was wrong.
Right. And what we're seeing now, and as a society we're learning more about, is that even, again, quote unquote, mainstream students might need a fidget. And whether that's a fidgety chair or just a physical fidget that they can move their hands with, it can make all the difference. And I think it's just taking us a little while to really grasp how small some of those interventions can be.
All right. The card says, if you could give every school building one magical superpower, what would it be? For example, self-cleaning cafeterias.
So one magical superpower.
Superpower. Every school building a superpower.
So you're going to make your school building a member of the Avengers in the Marvel Universe. So what do you think, Olivia?
I feel like, okay, this might not be a superpower, but I'm a huge Trekkie. So I'm going to say a transporter. So not necessarily that you would transport within the campus, right? But that, because I do think there's value in that exploration and bumping into people and that kind of interaction, right?
Yeah.
But that you could transport to somewhere in the community, a community business, and learn for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour or whatever about that kind of, working or being at a restaurant or being in an artist studio, or maybe there's an opportunity to go to another school and learn from their peers. And you could share a lot more resources as a district that way too. So you could, have a really fantastic STEM facility or with biomedical engineering, and you could have another place that was just this fantastic outdoor nature preserve, and everyone would share in those resources. And because the logistics are simple, right? Because you just press that button and you're transported away. It would allow, it would take away some of the barriers to being able to share resources. So
when someone says, we just want something simple, what does that phrase usually turn into about 6 meetings later?
Fantastic.
It's a great
question.
question.
Tell us what you think about that, so we know that you've encountered that and you will continue to encounter that. But go ahead.
I think what that turns into is just a constant balance and a check-in, right? It's this is what you said you wanted on day 1. This is what you said day 15. Where does that balance exist now on day 30? And I think it's keeping the lens of communications open and continuing to understand how the continuous information that they're getting, because a lot of people are drinking under a fire hose during this process.
Yeah.
And they're going to shift and they're going to understand more the longer they get into it. And so it's just that continuous check-in. Like, are we still on the right path?
Thanks for joining us as we took the Better Learning podcast on the road. We hope these conversations gave you new ideas, fresh perspectives, and a glimpse into the incredible work happening in learning environments across the country. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment sharing your favorite insight or where you'd like to see us record next time. You can find more episodes, additional resources, and learn more about the show at betterlearningpodcast.com. Thanks for being a part of the Better Learning community, and we'll see you next time.